Computer. Okay, welcome to anyone who's tuning in for our teaching on Abraham and his journey and what it means when we say in the Bible, Lech Lecha. So I'm going to sit down so the screen sees me better. Thanks to everyone who's here present and all those tuning in. So again, we're going to share the screen for the Bible verse, our theme verse. The Lord God said to Abram, so this is before his name is changed, right? Lord God said to Abram, go, or go to yourself, depending on the way you vocalize it, from your land, your relatives, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. What makes more sense? Go, or go to yourself? Go. It should just emphasize that it's a big go. And so when a Jew reads this text, the oral tradition is that it's go to yourself. And so a Jew will ask themselves, okay, the Lord God said to Abram, go to yourself from your land, your relatives, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. Ah, weird. You're going away from all these things to go to yourself. Okay? So what do you think the rabbinical interpretation might be of that? Find yourself, right? And this, I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. So there's something of identity that you're going to receive by going out, which makes this so appropriate for our experiences with young people or for any of us who's going on pilgrimage, right? Because our goal is not just to go out and flee or to leave the nest or to leave our ordinary, but the goal is to go deeper into ourselves, right? And to discover ourselves in a new way. And all the families of the earth will find blessing in you. Abraham went as the Lord directed him, right? He answers this call. And we're going to look at his, any of you who are here and looking at the Zoom, the next share I'm going to do is of the map of Abraham's journey. And but you can imagine this even without a visual. Abraham leaves which land to begin with? Right? And then to Haran, and then near Babylon, and then up the Euphrates, and then he's going to descend down into the promised land, the land that the Lord is showing him. And the first place that he goes when he arrives in the Holy Land is where? We're still in Genesis 12. Okay, this is the one of two places we want to visit in our lesson today. Because the place called Shechem, we usually say in English, or in Hebrew they say Shechem. Try to say that with me. Shechem, okay? Anytime you see a CH in Hebrew, can you guess? That's filtering through German. It's not a ch. Okay, ch doesn't exist in Hebrew. It's a ch, just like the CH in German. Okay, Shechem. And what's he going to do in Shechem, in Shechem? Let's look back at our verses. Change the share. Let's read a little more in Genesis 12. So this is oops, where'd it go? Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Genesis, the next verses, Genesis 5 through 9. Abraham took his wife Sarai, it's not Sarah yet, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Okay, it's called the land of Canaan. There's Canaanite people dwelling there, and they arrived there, and they went to the heart of Canaan, to the capital of Canaan, which is Shechem. Okay, or perhaps also known as Balaton was another ancient name for it. Abraham traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh, or it's kind of an oak, at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your offspring, I will give you this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. So this first place that becomes holy to God's covenant and people in the promised land, okay, in the story of Abraham is Shechem. Okay? And so it's interesting to say, well, what else is it Shechem? What else happens there later on? Okay? And let's just read the rest of the passage. From there, he went toward the hills, so he didn't stay long in Shechem, which this is probably an important city. How welcome was he there? But he venerated the holy oak, built a little altar. From there, he went toward the hills east of Bethel. Okay, what's going to happen at Bethel? Later on, right? Isaac, Jacob's going to have a vision there, right? And sorry, someone else. Where he pitched his tent, and Bethel on the west, Ai on the east, and there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abraham set out and continued toward the Negev. So he's going to keep going. Okay, so these are, we just want to stop really quick and say, what's there? What's this like? Maybe we could see some pictures of what's there in Shechem. Can anybody guess what else is going to happen there in Shechem? What's that? Okay, no, but much later on, in fact, Jacob is going to settle there and make a well. Okay, it says a place of Jacob's well. And if it's the place of Jacob's well in the Old Testament, what's it going to be in the New Testament? What happens at Jacob's well in Jesus' story? Samaritan woman, very good. Oops. So I'm going to screen share some images of a town that gets renamed Neapolis by the Romans, and which becomes today, can you guess what the city is? In fact, it's heart of the West Bank. It's where a lot of the Palestinian Authority offices are. Nablus, okay? Neapolis becomes Nablus, okay? And there's one famous Christian who's from Nablus, who he wasn't a Jew, he was a Roman, but one of the early Christians. His name's Justin Martyr, if you ever heard of him. So the Catholic parish in Nablus is actually called the parish of Justin Martyr. So I'm just going to screen share some photos. And this is a place that I love to take pilgrims. Every time we've been there, we've had an amazing experience. But as it's a place where there's a lot of Palestinian action brewing, it's not always that safe to go. And it's a difficult drive. But here's some photos of this is a soap factory in Nablus. And you can see the walls are really ancient, and it's kind of this warehouse in a very old building where there's soap. This is the ancient Shechem, or what they call Tel Balaton, which was the Canaanite walled-in city that's been excavated today. And here are just some more images of our, let's see, oops, where's here's a big image of the city. So the city's between two different mountains. There's another person who's going to come to through Shechem, which is Joshua. This is where he's going to come and challenge the Israelites as soon as they arrive in the Holy Land and say, here's the mountain of blessing and the mountain of curse. Okay, choose what you want, choose life. As for me and my house, I choose the Lord. Yeah. Okay, so this is what's happening there. And so this is kind of maybe the center of activity for Joshua. But it's not where it's where he brings the Ark of the Covenant in the beginning. It's not where he lays it to rest. Does anyone know where the Ark of the Covenant stays from the time Joshua comes in until it's lost to the Philistines and then ends up in Jerusalem? Shiloh, or we might say Shiloh in English. Okay, that's a big biblical hole. I don't know if there's hardly ever been somebody who could guess Shiloh and ask that question. But that's the place where the Ark of the Covenant is for almost 400 years. And that's where the center of pilgrimage was, the three pilgrimage feasts. That's where the tribes would gather. That's where the heads of the tribes went with Joshua to divide up the lands and be sent out to their respective parts of the land. So this is a place where it's a big city today. There's an image of the city and the well at the center, and a big market, 300,000 people, and perhaps 700, 800 Christians among them. what used to be a Christian city is today almost completely Muslim. And we can pray for this strong and beautiful but challenged Catholic community that's there. There's also an Orthodox and Anglican communities, and but a place that has a fire of community, Christian community in the Neo-Catechumenal Way. If you've heard of them, and the courageous parish priests that are there from the Neo-Catechumenal Way, and then also has the mothers of the Mother Teresa sisters, the Missionaries of Charity, and so yeah, I think grave that into your memory. Look up Shechem, and a really important place, the first place where Abraham is gonna to come and call holy, build an altar, and venerate when he comes to the Holy Land. Okay, let's go back to our biblical verses. I'll switch the screen sharing, and there's one other passage that we want to tackle. So I mentioned I don't go there often on my pilgrimages, but when we've gone there, we've had amazing sharing, and we've done service with Mother Teresa sisters, and pray for those Christians that are holding out. It's really hard to continue having a Christian community there. And so know that when you're supporting the Holy Land, praying for the Catholic Church, there's a couple of centers of gravity that are kind of easy to be Christian, relatively easy to be Christian, like Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and a lot of the Eastern Catholics were in Galilee. There's a few places where there's communities resisting in the midst of very much more Muslim areas or Israeli areas, and this is one of them in Nablus. Now we're going to turn to another place that, sorry, I'm going to screen share that map really quick. So afterwards, Abraham is going to descend to and settle. Well, he's going to go through a place called Hebron, and then after he goes to Egypt and has the whole mix up with Pharaoh, and whether or not Sarai is his wife or his sister, right? He comes back and he's going to. Sarah actually passes away, and just after the sacrifice of Isaac, right? Sarah passes away, and Abraham is going to go to Hebron to bury Sarah. Okay. In between, we might mention what's the first mention of Jerusalem in the Bible? Can you guess? When do we see Abraham in Jerusalem? Before he goes to buries on his way down, he's going to pass through and he's going to meet a priest king of the Jebusites named Melchizedek, okay, king of Salem, right? So that's a first mention of Salem. Is it Jerusalem? We think so. But then Abraham's going to do something in Jerusalem. We think he takes Isaac to be sacrificed on Mount Moriah. And we're not going to focus on this today, but Mount Moriah is going to be the place, what was perhaps already regarded as a holy mountain there in Jerusalem, near where the Jebusites and Melchizedek were. Abraham's going to take Isaac to be sacrificed there, perhaps in the same place where the Holy Holies of the temple was. Okay, so this is perhaps why David wants to be there in Jerusalem, or one of the reasons, and why they choose that place to build the temple is because it was the place of Abraham's sacrifice. Okay, but let's focus on Hebron. Hebron is mentioned like 78 times in the Bible, and most people haven't heard of it. And as far as pilgrimage goes, I've never seen another Christian in Hebron. I have heard that there is a Russian monk who lives somewhere in Hebron. Maybe that's the only resident Christian. There's also a woman that I correspond with since our pilgrims and I met her there, who really has Christian faith and wants to be Christian. It's years now that I tried to visit her in last couple of years ago. War broke out. Tried to visit her in April. War broke out. So anyway, you can pray for Kolud is her name, and she's not baptized, but she's there in Hebron. Maybe we can see there's a couple of Christians in Bethlehem in Hebron. So we're going to screen share again. Hebron, another place that I love to bring pilgrims that where is kind of a la carte off the beaten path, Father Anthony pilgrimage to go to these places that are super cool and so important for the Bible, but generally pilgrims don't go there because it's difficult to go there. It doesn't seem safe. And it's mostly a place that is today Arab and here in Hebron, half Arab and half Jewish and very controversial. Genesis 23. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Listen how much Abraham is respected. You're a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead. Okay, Abraham's passing through, but they're calling him a prince. And then Abraham rose and bowed down to the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, If you are willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf, so he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you. Ephraim the Hittite was sitting among his people and replied to Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city, No, my lord, listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Again, Abraham, oops, um, and again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephraim in their hearing, Listen to me, if you will, I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so that I can bury my dead. Ephraim answered Abraham, Listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver, but what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham agreed with Ephraim's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in hearing the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weight current among the merchants. So Ephraim's field in Machpelah near Mamre. What's Mamre? You ever heard of that? You ever heard of the oak of Mamre? Another holy oak? Have you ever seen the Rublev's icon of the Trinity? Okay, what's that commemorating? Where you see the three angels, but they're actually and if you look at the original one, it's not Rublev, there's Abraham and Sarah in the background. Mamre is where the three men appeared at Abraham's tent and announced that Sarah was going to bear a son. Okay, so there's a few things that are happening right here. Mamre, which is right, okay. Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave. The field is Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. So imagine what problems this causes for the Palestinian Israeli conflict. Okay, this is a very Arab place where there's been a little Jewish community over the ages. But then when all the fighting breaks out over whose is what's the question? What are the Israelis going to say? Why is it theirs? Like they fought over whether it's going to be given to Abraham or whether he's going to buy it. In the end, he buys it, and it's so precise of where this place is. There's three different names: Kiryat Arba, Machpelah. Sorry, there's four different names: Kiryat Arba, Hebron, the cave of Machpelah, and Mamre. So you can trace that there's so many times it's mentioned later in the Bible. So this is one of the locations that's easiest historically in archaeology to say this is here, and the Jews are going to say this belongs to us because we bought it, right? Wow, so the shrine. I'm going to share some images of the shrine. Um, if you've seen images of the temple in Jerusalem, do you know who built the temple in its glory? As Jesus knew it? Herod, right? And then it's destroyed, and we dug underneath, and we unearthed some of the Temple Mount as it. Okay, so if you go to Hebron, you see the structure that Herod built that didn't get destroyed, in fact. And it's those same big um, stones that built it, and it wasn't destroyed. And so very interesting to see it. And then the structure that afterwards went into different hands and was kind of built on here or there. But the inside was remodeled in different times. But the structure was built up on top of the cave, right? The cave is way down beneath. And so the structure was shared over the centuries between Jews and Christians. Who gets buried after Sarah in Hebron? We hear this story coming up again, this place coming up again and again, because who dies next? Abraham, and he's buried there. Okay? Abraham's sons, oh, Isaac is buried there. And then Isaac's wife, Rebecca, is buried there. And then their son, Jacob, is buried there. And Jacob's wife, who are Jacob's wives? Come on now. Leah and Rachel, okay? Rachel died first, and Abraham was on the road. He buried her right near Bethlehem, okay? But Leah gets buried next to Jacob. So here's this cave that's got the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Imagine how important this and how holy this site is, and how amazing that we know where it is. Who's the most famous person in the Old Testament? Moses. Where's Moses buried? The Bible says we don't know. Are you kidding me? I really think I make a case that Moses didn't really die, that he was assumed to heaven or something like that. How would we not know? Especially because it's right at the time when the Israelites are establishing themselves right next door to where he would have been died and buried. Or why wouldn't they carry him with them? They've carried Joseph back to the promised land, and Joseph they bury right there in Shechem. They forgot to bring Moses. They never visited him. What the heck? So for me, one of the biggest holes in the Bible is we don't know where Abraham's tomb. How much later did we don't know where Moses' tomb is? How much? Like, what's the time period? What's the spread between Abraham's life and Moses' life? How long were the Israelites in Egypt? 400 years. We're over 400 years older, and we know exactly where the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried. This site seems so interesting and so authentic to me, and yet there isn't a Christian there to welcome another Christian who comes as a pilgrim. Wow. Okay, and the shrine that St. Helen dedicated as a church, and so there's a stone that has this engraving by Helen in Greek. Later on becomes a mosque. Later on is shared by Jew and Muslim in the same space. What happens then? Outbreaks of violence, and they end up dividing the thing with a bulletproof wall. And so today you have Isaac and Leah on the mosque side. I'm not sure what they mean to uh, the Muslims, because it's not Isaac who's important in Islam, it's his brother Ishmael, right? And then on the Jewish side, Jacob and Leah. And in the middle, the wall goes straight over the memorials. In fact, they're not tombs, but they're memorials of Abraham and Sarah, because they were buried down underneath. And the funny thing is, nobody had any trace of somebody going down in there into the caves. Herod had built this big apparatus on top of it, and the cave had been guarded ever since. And inside the shrine, you can still see today that 2 or 3 stories down, you look through a hole, and they keep a flame burning. They keep a little oil lamp that they draw up on a string every day to change the lamp and then put it back down. But no one's ever supposed to go down into this cave, okay? We're talking like Indiana Jones story, right? So when the Israelis take over during the war, during like so we're in I think 73, the Yom Kippur War, they take over the shrine, and one of Israeli, I don't know if he was a general, I think it might have been even the one who was the one who had the eye patch. Anyway, Moshe Dayan, I'm not sure so I can look it up. But one of them just can't resist because he's an archaeologist as well. And so they kind of trick there were still these Turkish guards or guards that were still there, and they kind of trick them off of their night watch. And they go down because they know where. They find out where the entrance to the cave is. That's covered by a carpet or whatever. And a couple of them go down and go into that cave and see that. And sure enough, it's as they had seen in ancient diagrams of this place. That wow, you go down there, you go through this tunnel there, and then over here, and then sure enough, there is the lamp that's burning, and there is in the end of the cave a pile of bones. Wow. And apparently the Israelis haven't gone back since, but they did what they could to document and remember what they had seen. Why, it's the patriarchs and matriarchs. Right, that's what we think. So we're going to conclude there. But I think those are two very important places in the Bible. What are they called again? Shechem, or the Jews say Shechem, and Hebron, the Jews say Hebron. Okay, um, but so Hebron's just south of Bethlehem, 10 kilometer, yeah, maybe 10 miles south of Bethlehem, and really not a lick of Christianity that's left, but very interesting. The the shrine is divided, and then to get to one side from the other, there's checkpoints, and Israelis are living on top of Palestinians and throwing things down on them, and there's been outbreaks of violence over the years. A very difficult place, a place where there's lots of Europeans who are interested in social justice who will go and just buy from the shops and interview people. So if you look up Hebron, you'll find that kind of thing. But I think religiously, it's so interesting. And the gift we have, an Israeli can't go to the Muslim side, and a Muslim can't go to the Israeli side. But as Christians, we can go to both sides. And so I love doing that tour of both sides, and the chance we have to go into the mosque atmosphere on one side, and all the women have to wear a gown with the hood over them. And then on the Israeli side, we go in, and it feels like a synagogue. But they recognize us going into either places, and it's a place where we can feel at home and like we're supposed to be there, going into a mosque or a synagogue, because it's a place that's holy to us. So Temple Mount, totally different thing that we'll visit another time, but it really looks similar because it was built by Herod and is intact today. So look up some images or stories from Shechem, which is now called Nablus, Nablus. Look up Hebron, and then please practice your Hebrew. If you haven't signed up, I would love to have a list of people who are here. I wasn't expecting this many people here. So if I know you're coming, we'll provide more hospitality, and we'll send you recordings. And by the way, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks for joining us. Let's see.